Welcome to Close the Gap, where we thoughtfully engage with CEOs and top industry leaders all working to close the female equity gap in the C-suite and boardroom. Christine Gannon, the CEO of Brightworks Consulting, and Dr. Antoinette Farmer-Thompson, a senior leader with Arizona State University, host insightful conversations responsible for moving the needle for female participation in the C-suite.
Welcome to another edition of Close the Gap. We are honored today to have Angela Cody-Rouget with us. She's the founder and owner of Major Organizers, a residential organizing company, and she's been building the Major Organizers brand, formerly Major Mom, since November of 2006, and she currently has a team of Liberators in 5 states. She was featured on the military episode of Shark Tank on February 5th, 2016. She spent 14 years dedicated to serving her country in the U.S. Air Force as a satellite commander and missileer. She attained the rank of major, and her husband nicknamed her Major Mom after their first child was born. After her son was born in 2005, she resigned her commission to be a better wife and mother to her 2 children. She's currently in the process of franchising her brand in order to create more jobs and opportunities for people who were born to organize. She has several locations, which you can see at majormom.biz. And like most women, she sometimes feels torn between kids, career, and balancing everything, but she's thankful to have a husband who's super supportive. Angela, welcome. We're so glad to have you here today.
Thank you so much, ladies. I want to give you a salute right away for everything you're doing on this project.
Thank you. Thank you for your service. So Angela, to start our conversation this morning, can you talk a little bit about your experience in the military in terms of being a woman and how you felt did you have sponsorship, mentorship in terms of your career path and where you were headed in the military?
No, that is something that I really feel strongly about now, as I just turned 50. I think, man, I would have been so much better. I would have been so much more successful, less tears, less stress if I had a female officer, come beside me and show me the ropes a little bit. But really, part of the reason why that doesn't happen in the military is because, one, you're already a minority. The Air Force, I think, is 14% women when I was in. So, there aren't enough of us to, mentor each other. And then there may not be near the same rank as you. And then that woman may be your boss, which isn't really always the best mentor because she has to tell you what to do and write your officer reports, your annual reports. And so I really did not have mentorship in the military. My experience, though, was that a lot of the enlisted troops, the tech sergeants, the master sergeants, I was an officer, they would show you the ropes with the job, kind of the politics of the job too, like, okay, colonel likes it this way, do it this way, kind of how to navigate some of the people and rank schedules and things like that. But when it came to really, okay, what do you need to do next? What do you need to do next? That kind of is already written for everyone. So, for example, if you want to make major, I was a major in the Air Force. If you even want to think about making major, here's 5 things you have to do. And it's, it's always education, learning, and, one certification after another. And it's for everybody. Like, this is the minimum bar. And so the cool thing about the military, unlike corporate, is that you have a very clear path to major. After that, it starts getting a lot more difficult and political. But if you check all these boxes and get all these degrees and do everything you need to do, you have a very good chance to make major. And so that was really, the template was there, and it was generic in terms of female males. Like, this is just what you have to do.
Well, I appreciate the fact that the military does that career pathing very well. But to your point, had you had the benefit of a female officer to come alongside you, you would have shed fewer tears. And congratulations on turning 50. It is the new 30, trust us.
So Angela, great points. You had a tremendous amount of experience. In fact, I remember you sharing in a presentation that you had the key to the nukes. And so as you think about those experiences where the level of responsibility that you were given, just based on your performance, based on your acumen, based on your knowledge and brilliance, how did that prepare you for entrepreneurship? How did those experiences really prepare you to transition?
You know, the one thing that I'm naturally organized, I moved 27 times by the time I was, 30. We moved 16 times by the time I was 14. So like I got really good at making quick decisions on what was a treasure, what was not a treasure, getting everything organized. As soon as we got to the new place, unpacking, getting organized. And so there's this natural part of me that's very organized and task oriented. But then I joined the military and I learned about checklists, operations manuals, and these are the kind of checklists and operations manuals that don't sit on the shelf. They get pulled down, and you're running those checklists, and you're pulling these gargantuan size ops manuals off, and you know them, and you don't memorize them. The military is not keen on memorizing things. We don't have enough brain power for that. They're into know which manual to pull down, run the checklist, and don't make up steps to the checklist. It just is run it. So that military part, you think, okay, well, entrepreneurship, you got to fly by your seat of your pants. Well, things go wrong in the military, and you do have to kind of think like, okay, that didn't work. That checklist didn't work. This alarm is still going. And so, what do we do next? And I kind of feel like that's what entrepreneur is is for the last 15 years. Well, really 20 years I've been an entrepreneur in real estate and had other businesses, but sometimes you just have what are we supposed to do now? And that ability to have critical thinking skills and think for a second and use all the knowledge that you have to make a good decision is what I think the military brought to my entrepreneurial skills. In other words, a lot of times in the military, which is not like a lot of corporate America, it's make a decision and run with it. It may not be the best one, but it'll still get us there. We're not going to talk about it for 5 days. We don't have time to talk about this for 5 days. And that was the fun part about the military is I could make a decision and we run with it. And that's what we're going to do. And we can talk about it later, what we call as a hot wash. When it's all done, if it wasn't the right choice or the best choice, we'll talk about that later. And in entrepreneurial life, you really do need to just make a decision and you need to go forward and then adjust as you go. And so I think that skill set as an entrepreneur is great. I mean, I can show you all the checklists I have for my job to standardize how we go into a client's house. We have the organizing job checklist. It's 1 page. We can bring somebody in, get them trained up to be a liberator and, declutter and organize homes. And so the systems that I put in place were everything I learned in the military, because after you train one person how to do your job, do as best as they can, like me, you can't retain all of that stuff verbally. I can't tell you how many people I've worked with, because every once in a while I'll consult with businesses, small businesses who, they want to hire an assistant. I'm like, you don't have anything written down. Let's get some stuff written down.
Right.
So they know what to do, who to call. Let's just give them a little tiny quick reference manual, talking about 4 pages of here's how we do things, and then let it grow from there. But you cannot duplicate yourself as an entrepreneur, which is critical if you want to be a business owner and have the business grow beyond yourself, if you don't have some checklists, some operations manuals, some systems in place.
That's a great point. And let me go back to what you said about decisions, making them and going with them. So give us an idea. You're responsible for missiles. Give us an idea of, if you can, of your grittiest moment in the military, and then compare that to your grittiest moment as you run your companies.
Yeah, I think, on pulling alert, 60 feet underground in a big concrete eggshells, what you basically are in on four huge springs, in case we're at ground zero or near a blast, you're supposed to just bounce around in there. And so the whole design is really bizarre, but we train every single day in the field for war. So every day we get a message that comes across our machine. We look at it, we decode it, we figure out, was this one for the president? And every day bells and whistles are going off. It's 1950s amazing technology. I mean, and they're large computers. And so I can remember a couple of times where I had basically an inspector general level type person coming out and pulling an alert with me, which is always like, oh gosh, I hope I don't mess up in front of this person. Because of course mistakes happen once in a while, nothing that would launch a missile. But I remember we got into a situation where we got an alarm, and it was an alarm we trained for all the time. But it was one of those alarms you're like, don't want to see that one in real life. But any alarm that actually happened out on alert was real. The messages were you had to determine if they're real. And they constantly send you messages because they want you ready all the time. And so we got this alarm, and it meant we had to go into anti-jam, which is a very intense process. And you have so many seconds to do everything, and that's classified, but you have a certain amount of time. You better get into anti-jam to make sure nobody's able to tamper with your communication systems. And we didn't make that time limit. And it actually was the inspector general's fault. So that was one of those kind of like, now what do I do? Do I report her? Do we tell on ourselves that we missed the time? So, you're sitting there going, what do we do? We have to make a decision. What are we going to do? Mm-hmm. At the end of the day, nothing was damaged. No harm was done. That time limit was busted. And we said, here's what we're going to do. They can audit our tapes. We have to bring our tapes back to the base all the time, and they look through them. And if they determine that we missed it, then, we'll take whatever the consequences are, which would have been pretty minimal. But the embarrassment for the inspector general of missing that time, because she was the commander, when you have a higher ranking come out there, the commander, I was a deputy. So the deputy was kind of like, ugh. That wasn't me, but I didn't tell on her. She didn't tell on herself. And so those are one of those moments where you have this ethical and moral dilemma, and you have to think, like the doctor was saying, and make a decision what you're going to do and why, and know why you're doing it. And so that happens all the time for corporate America and military, is that there was no harm, no foul done. You did break a rule or something did happen, but, are you going to tell on yourself constantly and then risk your entire career? And these are dilemmas that people find themselves in every single day.
Yes.
And it's, and there was very few like that happened in my 14 years. But that was the one I would never forget, because my heart was racing the entire rest of the day.
So a couple of key things that I was hearing, you were prepared. You were incredibly prepared because you had been preparing every day for war. You had been preparing. So you knew what to do. And you, even in the midst of being incredibly prepared, having a checklist, having everything you could possibly do for things to go right, something went wrong. And you had to make a quick decision. And you used all that preparation potentially to make that decision. But then there's also an ethical and moral component in terms of how should I handle this? And I think that's a very real situation that women find themselves in their role, whether it's an entrepreneur, whether it's an employee, whether it's CEO. you can be as prepared as you can be, but situations will happen that you have to be very quick. So
Yes, and there's always like in the military and corporate America, you can always learn how to play the game too. And I don't like to be a game player. I don't like to teach women how to play the game. But I'll tell you another quick example of if women don't know how to play the game and they don't play it, you're going to get marginalized and put to the side. And what I mean by that is a lot of the male officers would say, well, here's what you can do, to kind of bypass this procedure, and no harm, no foul. But it's like, well, that's not that was never taught. We're not going to do that. And then so if you become this person, it's like, well, that's not written down. I'm not going to do it. And you see everybody else doing it. It's like, well, there is no harm, no foul. And I won't say what the procedure is, but let's just say you do a procedure earlier than need be, and that's okay. But that's not how we're trained. And so I could have saved some real heartache a couple of times if I had just done a certain procedure early, like the guys were telling me to. And because I didn't, I waited for the alarm and then I ran the procedure. The alarm happens every day, at certain times of the day. And I didn't run it early. And some other things happened in the same time. And it was like, oh, I should have just run that thing early. And so that's called playing the game. That's calling being on the front lines and knowing what needs to happen when you're in an operational environment and doing it. And so that everyone can kind of, that procedure's done, now let's go to the next one, versus, well, nope, I'm going to just wait right here for it. And so I never was good at the game playing part of saying, oh, I never would have thought to do that early. I mean, that's just not how I think. And so learning some of that and finally surrendering to it made me also a better entrepreneur, because you say, okay, I wasn't expecting that to happen at that time. Or, you know what? Well, let's wait until this happens and then I'll call the client, or let's wait till this and then maybe we'll have the meeting. And it's like, no, let's just do it now. Let's do this now so that when the client calls, we're already ready. And so kind of gaming it, strategizing, those are things I learned in the military. Kind of get ahead of it. Don't wait for it to happen. And that was really a tough lesson for me, and some very embarrassing moments, because I just wouldn't submit to that, playing the game, if you will.
So Angela is in our book that we just released, Women Executive Grit. You can read all about her story in here. But Angela, I want to go back to something that you talked about in your interview that we did, in terms of what you feel like you did differently than your other colleagues. And I think you've shared a lot of that in terms of being prepared, not playing the game potentially, but maneuvering and figuring out a way to be successful in spite of, very successful with your businesses. What advice would you give to other women in terms of, as they go through their career or they're just starting their career, for them to find success and create success for themselves? What advice would you give to them?
I think whatever career field you're in as a woman, the first thing that you have to submit to and surrender to is that you will be viewed differently than your male counterparts, because you are different than your male counterparts. And accepting that and figuring out how to capitalize on it is something that I did not start off my military career doing. I started off my career trying to blend in like a chameleon. I didn't wear makeup. I didn't want to be anything except one of the guys. And that actually doesn't get you very far when you just are one of the guys, drinking with the guys, going out with the guys, and just want to be one of the guys. You're not one of the guys. So the best advice I can give you is don't be one of the guys. Be the woman that God created you to be, and stay in integrity and stay in alignment with what you were hired to do at that company with the skill set that you have. And secondly, believe that you have a skill set to offer that company, regardless if you've had specific certifications or specific training. We women have an intuition. We have a skill set that's hard to put on a resume. And that's the intuition part. Sometimes we just are really good at making decisions. Sometimes we have interesting ways to do things that the male counterparts don't understand. Stick by some of those ideas, push them through. Sometimes it sounds different, but you've got a good idea, push it through. Have some confidence. Nobody may like it and it may not get selected as the idea at the time, but guess what? What happened 3 months, 6 months, a year down the road, somebody say, remember when Angela had that dumb idea? And they say, actually, let's try it. And so I think sometimes women can be afraid to be dumb, to say something dumb. So they don't say anything at all. And it's better just to say it, have the courage to say, well, I think it's a good idea. And then go with it, and nobody else says, okay, well, next.
So speaking of that, I want to ask you your transition from military to starting your own business and thinking about your superpower of just being an organizer. I mean, that is not a gift everyone has. So how did you do the transformation from military to starting your own business, specifically the one that you're doing now, and tell us a little bit more about it?
Well, the transition of getting out of the military and that decision was made easy for me because I was a major in the Air Force when I became a mom. That's why my nickname was Major Mom. Then 18 months later, I had my son. Now I have 2 kids under the age of, 18 months and a 9-month-old. I have a husband who's running our real estate business. And, I just started to grow a huge place in my heart to be a better mom, to be more available to my children. A lot of that is based on the fact that my mom was never around and things didn't go well because of that. And so I thought, darn it, I'm going to have to give up some dreams of being general or colonel. I'm going to give those dreams up and shift them to being a mom. Well, then, as God would have it, I become a mom and our real estate business tanks. The Great Recession happens and I have to go back to the drawing board. And so being forced to go back to the drawing board to figure out what am I going to do? I just quit my career to be a stay-at-home mom for a few years and be with these kiddos. That transition from the military and civilian back into entrepreneurship is probably what kept me so happy, because being an entrepreneur and starting a business feels so much like coming into a new unit and having to learn everything from scratch. You don't join a unit in the military and know everything. You join a unit and you're the FNG. I won't say what that means, but you're the new person, and nobody likes the new person in the unit. Just like it's like, oh gosh, we got to train another one. So I was used to this, train another one, train another one, train another one. So I started the business and I was like, I needed a partner. I need an employee. I want to start training another employee, training another one. 15 years later, I have trained 100 different employees over 15 years in locations. And I love training them to be the best they can be in our company. And I think that's because I spent the majority of my career training my replacement and training the other people. And so the military is world-class training. So the transition between military and entrepreneurship was great for me because I wanted a company beyond myself. I don't like to do everything. I'm not a control freak. I don't want to do so many tasks because I'm not good at it. And so I don't need to be the bookkeeper. I don't need to do this. And so the other thing that the transition from civilian to entrepreneurship the military gave me was trusting for the frontline people to do the job if you train them right. So I don't have to keep checking on my employees all the time. I don't have to show up and see what they're doing. If I train them right and I pick the right person, I can let go of control a little bit, let them do what they do in the field the way they would do it. Even if I maybe didn't like all their solutions that they created in the kitchen, doesn't matter. It's still a good one. And again, that's the final lesson for a lot of women is there are 100 ways to do things. Just pick one and do it. don't worry, overthink everything all the time.
That is something that we do, isn't it? Absolutely. We strive for perfection a lot of the time. So Angela, thank you. Thank you for being with us today. I just want to let our listeners and audience know that you can find the rest of Angela's story in Women Executive Grit, which is on Amazon. And it is a very robust interview. It is an amazing interview. So I really encourage you to get the book and read it. And Angela, where can our listeners and audience find you?
They can find me at majormom.biz. We have a contact us page, and it's a really fun contact page. So if you go there, there's actually a little button that says, I saw you on TV, or I want to say congratulations. And those go straight to me, so that way our staff didn't get kind of burdened with a lot of these just well wishes. And so if you go to contact us and you just want to say, hey, I saw you, thanks for what you said on the interview, you can just click on that. But if you want to hire us, there's also a button requesting a free estimate. So just go to the contact us page, and we have a variety of things that you can contact us about, especially if you want to be a professional home organizer. We train people up. We have a great training program. There's a little button there saying I want a career with major organizers. So I thank you ladies so much for everything you're doing. Thanks for having me on today. And I hope you have a majorly organized day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening. You can find more information and connect with Christine or Tony at www.tffei.org or on LinkedIn at the Foundation for Female Equity and Inclusion.